Hey guys, in this video I'm walking you through every single step that I took to change the steering wheel on my BMW Z4 E85 2003 3-litre I. And by the time we're done, it'll go from looking like this to this. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is unhook the battery. So we're going to hit the boot release, open up the boot and remove the shelf. From here in the battery we have to disconnect the negative terminal first, followed by the positive terminal. So with my adjustable spanner I'm going to tighten that on the nut just to get it loose, and then you just pull it off the battery and tuck it down and make sure that it's not going to fall back and touch the terminal at any point. The next stage is to take off the positive. So take off the plastic cap, set that to one side, and then we do the same here. So grab the adjustable spanner or your own spanner or wrench just to undo that, and that's nice and loose. And take that off, and we need to make sure this doesn't touch either. So what I like to do now is take the plastic cap and put it back on top and let it rest on top. So that's the positive connection resting on the plastic cap there, so we can be sure that they won't touch when we're working on the car, and that's great. And one thing you might think is, now that you've got the battery disconnected, how will I be able to open my boot? Because I normally press the button and then it opens, but actually you can just put your key in here and open it, so it's fine to close that, and I'm going to do that today because as you can see it's been raining, so I don't want to get any water inside the battery. And so the next thing we've got to do is take the airbag off of the steering wheel itself. And that's very simple, but we're going to wait 5 or 10 minutes, and some people say half an hour, for the battery to discharge to make sure that we're not going to let this airbag go off when we take it off. So I'm going to wait a few minutes and we come back and take the airbag off. Okay, so we've waited 5 or 10 minutes now, and what we're going to do is take the airbag off, and you can see there's a hole here and there's a hole on the other side here as well, and we need to stick something long and thin to get down into there, and what it's going to do is push on a little spring that holds this whole unit in place, and it compresses that spring, and then the whole unit pops out. And you can do one side at a time, so I'm going to start this side, then I'm going to do this side, and then this whole unit will just lift out. So I've got a screwdriver that I'm going to use just to put down into here, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. You need to find where that spring is inside the hole, so you might spend 5 or 10 minutes, or the first time I did this I spent about half an hour trying to find where the spring was, trying not to break it. So I'm going to find that now, and I'm going to pop this side off, and then I'm going to pop the other side off, and I'll show you as I do those. So I've found where this spring is, and when you get it in the right spot you can feel it pushing back against the screwdriver. If you angle your screwdriver slightly further away and back towards the airbag unit, you'll be able to feel it a lot easier than if you just push it in straight, which will go in a lot deeper and you won't hit anything but wires and metal. So push it slightly back towards, and then you can help out this side of the airbag at the same time, and you'll see that it just easily pops out. I need to do the other side before I can take the whole unit out. Okay, so I've popped the other side out and I have the whole airbag out now, and what I need to do is disconnect these wires to make sure that I don't break anything. I can move it and then I can replace this whole steering wheel, but first we'll come to the plastic trim. So we'll start on the cables, then we'll move to the plastic trim, and then we'll remove the whole wheel. So the easiest way to disconnect these cables is to find the black connection in the top there and just pull that out and then lay it flat. So I've pulled that top connection out there, and that just gives me a little bit more room to work with these connections here. So we need to remove these two and set this whole airbag unit to one side, and then we need to remove these plastic trims in the sides and the bottom, and then we can take the whole wheel out with a little nut that's behind here. So the easiest way to remove these two cables for me is to lever. I have a little wooden awl here. I'm going to lever the sides of the connections up here, and one on this side. And then once that's levered up, you can see how that's pulled up compared to this one. I'm going to do the same one here in a minute. Just lever that up, and then you can pull the unit straight up and out. so that connects in there. I'm going to do the same to this one now. So you might want to set this carefully to one side. You may find that your screwdriver doesn't actually fit behind here and the dashboard, so if so, turn the key once and just turn the steering wheel round to give you a little bit more room to take that out behind. Before I go any further, I just wanted to show you the two springs that hold the airbag in place. You can see them going down and curling around the bottom here, and these are the springs that we're pushing against to release that airbag out of the steering wheel. You can see the access point up here where I place my screwdriver in, and then if I push on the spring itself you can see it moving, so you need to push that way and the other one inwards as well, and they pop off on either side. So I just wanted to show you the plastic trim coming off. So I've taken the screws out of the back, and you might find it takes a little bit of persuading because the plastic itself actually clips into itself down the sides here, so it needs a little bit of persuading, and do try not to pull too hard or you might break the plastic posts that sit in here that allow the screws to come in and tighten together. So that's all the plastic trim taken off of the spokes, and the last thing we need to do is remove this center bolt here, and then we can fit our new wheel on here, and you can see the two guiding pins that make sure that you get it nice and central. So this bolt is 16mm, so I have my 16mm socket on my breaker bar, and I'm just going to work this in and loosen it up so that then I can move the steering wheel off away from the steering assembly. So I've used the breaker bar to loosen up that bolt, and now I'm just undoing it slightly, and I'm going to put my hands on here and free this from the rest of the assembly. So just with two hands here I'm pushing this back and forth and it's free, so I'm going to take this bolt all the way out now and then take off the wheel. So I just want to take a second to show you the new wheel. The new wheel doesn't have any of this assembly in the middle, so I'm going to have to remove this center section with the Torx bolts here, and remove this and put this on the new wheel, but you'll notice that there's a little grounding cable that goes in here, so I have to be careful to remove that also with a smaller Torx head, so that I can remove this from here and put it onto my new one. So I've removed the screw from this cable here, and I've removed these two Torx bolts, and I've loosened this one up just so I can pull it off by hand. And then you can take the whole wheel out, and that is the wheel removed. So here is my new wheel, and you'll notice on the back there's no plastic trim either, so we have to take the Torx bolts out of here, lift this up and transplant it here. Okay, so that's the rear plastic trim on, and we basically just need to reverse this whole process. So we need to place the steering wheel back on, and that is very easy to center properly because of these guide pins here. You can see the two guide pins, and they fit in the corresponding holes here, so we just need to get that lined up and then slot that in, and then we can start putting the rest of the assembly on. So one of the issues I found after removing my plastic trim were that these posts on the back were snapping off, and actually they were already snapped off from where a previous owner must have tried to take them off, and they were so damaged that every time I glued them with super glue they wouldn't stay on. I would put the screw through from the other side and they would just shear off again. So I did a bit of research into glue, and it turns out that super glue actually forms quite brittle, so when any force is applied to it, it just snaps. So instead I went out and got some epoxy, which this is Gorilla epoxy, and this is great because it's got a little plunger and it mixes the two together, and it comes in its own blister pack in which you can mix the glue together itself, so there's no mess and you don't have to mess around. It comes with a little mixing stick, so this was really crucial to getting these posts installed nice and tight. And actually I've just put one on and tested it, and it works perfectly, so I'm going to take you into the car to show you now. Or at least I would show you the trim on the wheel if my cat would get out of the way. Rora! Can you excuse me please? Thank you. And I fit it together perfectly now, so the post held in nice and tight as I pushed it in, which I'll show you on the other side in a second, and I clamped them together with my fingers, loosely put the screw in from the other side and tightened it up, and I made sure I clamped it with my fingers clean fingers mind, as I screwed it in so that I didn't put any unnecessary strain on the plastic post on the inside. One thing I did notice was that these holes here are very tight. That could just be because the condition of the steering wheel. Maybe my old one wasn't as tight, maybe the rubber was a bit more worn, I don't know. But to help the posts go in the hole here, I put a little bit of sort of Vaseline just to lubricate the plastic as it went in there. So it went in nice and easy, there's no pressure on it, it wasn't being pulled to one side or the other, and then I held it together and screwed in from the other side. So I'm going to do this side and I'm going to do the bottom now, and then I'm going to refit the airbag, and that should be the job done, hopefully. Okay, so that's the 3 spokes on, screwed together, they're nice and tight, they're not going anywhere, and now all I have to do is put this airbag on and that's done. Okay, so I've got the airbag, I'm just reseating it, so you just give it a little bit of a push, and that is in there fine, and this looks great. So the airbag's on, the trim's on, the steering wheel looks nice, it turns, brilliant. Okay, so now we reconnect the battery. Take the key out of the ignition and head round to the boot. Heading around the back, I'm going to use the key to get in, and I'm going to reconnect these. So take this plastic cover off, always the red first, open that up, okay, and now the negative. Doing that up nice and tight by hand. I'm going to grab my tool, finish it off. So that's the carpet back down. Let's close the boot lid. Go back to the driver's cab, and okay, yeah, all the lights are on. So I'm just going to turn it on and leaning back slightly in case the airbag goes off. Perfect. That works great. So there we go, that's every single step that I took to refit my new steering wheel.